Watch and burn.
Hey everybody, so tonight I am going to be discussing the 1986 film Wall Street, starring Michael Douglas and Martin Sheen and Daryl Hannah and a bunch of other people. And the reason I wanted to talk about this movie is because this has been sort of like one of the go-to movies that I've been watching since I was a kid. I used to rent this from the library when I lived in Pickering. And you know, when you're a kid and you don't have a lot of money, and then you find out your local branch of the public library has movies that are free to rent. Of course, back then there was a $2 late fee, and occasionally I would run into I would get into debt with the library, so I wouldn't be able to rent movies for a while until I paid off the $6 or whatever it was that I owed that had accumulated. But anyways, this was one of the movies that I always used to grab. This, The Road Warrior, THX 1138, and Wall Street. Like, wait. I said Wall Street. Oh, I'm fucking retarded. But anyways, yeah, this THX 1138 and Full Metal Jacket used to be my sort of go-tos. I love this movie. I love The Wealth. I love Stuart Copeland's score, which of course Stuart Copeland, the drummer from The Police, was on fire at this point. He also did the score for the mid-running TV show The Equalizer, starring Edward Woodward. And the score for this and the score for The Equalizer do share a lot of the same similarities, which I love because when I'm watching Wall Street, I think of The Equalizer, and when I'm watching The Equalizer, I think of Wall Street. So I like that connection that I can make between the two. It kind of like brings things full circle. But yeah, the score was so remarkable. I love how Oliver Stone pops up as a day trader at some point. He's like, yeah, get me down for, I think it was Endicott Steel. He's like, yeah, put me down for da-da-da for Endicott Steel. And so yeah, so this tells the story of Bud Fox. That's Charlie Sheen's character. And he's a sort of just your average day trader working for some firm. And he is cold calling people saying that, hey, we got these great stocks we're trying to sell you. And it's essentially a bunch of phone book salesman nonsense, and he wants to get into the good graces of the Gordon Gekko, played of course by Michael Douglas. This is the movie that spawned the line "Greed is good," which went on to define so many, like, my god, Greed is good defined the 1980s. And of course the 80s didn't really come into their own until Miami Vice popped up with the white leisure suits with the pink shirts around 84, 85. So when this movie popped off right at the same time and Gordon Gekko says greed is good, man, the 80s became the me generation, the me decade, that's exactly what the 80s were. It was the me decade, the me generation. Fucking bunch of yuppies. And I, of course, wasn't a yuppie. I grew up in a fucking co-op in Scarborough. So I definitely wasn't out there trying to find my version of Gordon Gekko at Kingston Road in Galloway, because he just wasn't there. So, I mean, God, this movie's fun. Like, I loved The Wealth. I loved that sort of, like, endless pursuit of greed. I loved how everybody just seems to be in it for themselves. Like, Bud doesn't give a fuck about Gordon. Gordon doesn't give a fuck about Bud. I think Bud genuinely digs Daryl Hannah, but I don't know if these people are really capable of feeling anything other than greed. It's sort of something that I have always really liked about this movie, was just how cold it was. And I like the separation between the poor and the wealthy. And I think that the scene that best encapsulates that would be when Daryl Hannah and Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen are out on the dune buggies on the beach. And you can see in the background, as they're bombing around, you can see some fishermen setting up their boat for the day, getting their nets ready because they have to go out and fish in order to earn a living, in order to feed their families. And then, yet, you look off to the left and you have these three incredibly wealthy people acting like kids, barely 150 feet from them, on these like expensive dune buggies that these fishermen could never afford because they're most likely living from paycheck to paycheck. But that doesn't affect people like Gordon Gekko and Bud Fox. So they're completely oblivious to other people's suffering because they're just so focused on making as much money as they can. So naturally, Gekko motivates Bud to get him fresh information, fresh stock, something that's going to make him a killing, and he doesn't care how he does it. And Bud Fox is a clever guy, so he finds a way to partner up with this like cleaning service that he can pretend to be like a supervisor for, and he goes into all these different offices pretending to be the supervisor, checking the staff if, oh, is so-and-so vacuuming okay, is so-and-so dusting okay, and while he's in there, he's going through the staff's files in said office in order to find new information that can allow Gekko to make more money. This, of course, catches up with him and he ends up doing time. and as does Gordon Gekko. We find that out in the rather horribly inferior sequel, Money Never Sleeps, with Shia LaBeouf, or whatever the fuck you say his name. He's not famous anymore, so who cares? God, that movie's awful. I like that Josh Brolin's in it, but Money Never Sleeps was just a waste of time. You know, Oliver Stone, buddy, you were past your peak. Just let Stone's movies live on in the 80s there, Oliver. Stop trying. You know, you did JFK. It was amazing. Why'd you make Nixon? No one cares. You know, I'm so glad he never tried to sequelize Natural Born Killers. I fucking love Natural Born Killers. God damn, I watch that movie like at least once a week. I love Natural Born Killers so much. Mickey and Mallory. I mean, I know that Oliver Stone butchered Tarantino's Bonnie and Clyde script, but I don't care. Oliver Stone made the most inventive and most disgustingly creative student film ever. It's like consisting of, I think it was like 35 or 3,600 cuts, when the average feature film usually has roughly half that. And for some reason, I'm now talking about Natural Born Killers when I should be discussing Wall Street. But I do like getting off base in these videos because despite the fact that I'm putting these out to the public, I love how my train of thought just kind of runs off to wherever it is. How that fucking sun is really getting on my nerves. And so I do apologize for you guys trying to watch these videos hoping for some semblance of coherence, because I'm not the most coherent person most of the time. The fucking mania just takes over and I start bouncing from thing to thing. But I'm back to Wall Street. I love the clothing, I love the music, I love the vibe, I love how this movie's shot, I love the wealth, the scene on the beach with the dune buggies. That is just so indicative of everything that was wrong with the 1980s. And I just love this movie. I absolutely love the score. I think actually my favorite thing about this movie would technically be the score. Stuart Copeland, man, he was on fire at this point. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it because, yeah, kind of went off the rails a little here. So like always, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little over 7 minutes while I discussed the 1986 movie, Wall Street. Like always, if you like this review or you're able to follow along and you didn't think it was annoying when I went off the rails and started talking about Natural Born Killers, don't forget to go out and do something nice for somebody. But please, most importantly, don't forget that the world is so much better because you're here. Whatever it is you're going through, don't give up because it's going to get better. All right, I'm getting out of here. Have a good day or night or whatever. Yeah.